You know, there are many times throughout history that people you remember where you are when you have monumental moments in history happen. From people of a certain generation, when man first landed on the moon, you remember where you were. You remember where you were when JFK got shot. I remember where I was when that stupid punk kid Jeffrey Mayer stole a fly ball out from Tony Tarasco and cost the Orioles the American League Championship Series. You know, I remember where I was when the Capitals won the Stanley Cup. And last week was such a day in the history of all of our lives. And I ask you, dear listener and viewer, where were you when you found out that Golden Sun is coming to the Nintendo Switch? Truly a monumental day in history.
You want to know where I was? I was sitting in the parking lot of the Dunkin' Donuts in Middle River, Maryland, because that's the only place where I could sit and watch the Direct on my phone. Because I was trying to kill some time before seeing Les Miserables at the Hippodrome that night. And when I tell you my phone exploded when like the Golden Sun box art was on screen for a second and a half, I got so many. I got added on Discord. I got DMs on Discord. I got my Twitter exploded. My Facebook messages exploded. I got like 3 different texts. It's like, I want to say like 15 to 20 different individuals all messaged me at the same time to be like, oh my God, Golden Sun.
I mean, that is what happens when you literally build your brand on being the world's #1 Golden Sun stan in the entire world. So
yeah, it's me. I'm that guy, and thank you to all of you who made sure that I saw. But yes, I saw it. I saw it live, and I am delighted. So yeah, we're gonna just go ahead and start this episode talking about the Nintendo Direct, and Golden Sun was one of several games announced to be coming to the Nintendo Switch Online functionality. They have added Game Boy
before you get started, I do feel it necessary. If you're new here, this is the Dense Pixels podcast. I'm your host Brad, joined by my co-host Carrie.
Hi.
It is truly
like Golden Sun.
Yeah, it is truly a Nintendo themed episode. You know, probably better that Mike is not here so that he does not have to nerd out about all this Nintendo stuff. Again, it's Nintendo news all up and down the docket, and then we're going to talk about Steam Next Fest because an indie developer is making the game that I never knew that I needed, but I can now not live without. But we'll talk about that later in the episode. As Carrie alluded to, there was a 40-minute Nintendo Direct. We were expecting surprises. We got some surprises. We got some things that we quite frankly expected. One of those things being Game Boy Advance and Game Boy coming to the Switch in terms of the like virtual console thing dealio that they do.
Yeah, stoked on that. I mean, look, Game Boy and Game Boy Advance is what I grew up on as a kid. Like, I think I've mentioned on the podcast a few times, like, I did not have like a television gaming console as a child because my parents were like, if we get you an N64, you're never going to leave the house. And you know what? They were probably right. So good on them. But I had a Game Boy Color and then a Game Boy Advance. So they're putting Game Boy and Game Boy Color games on Switch Online as well as Game Boy Advance, which I think they're reserving Game Boy Advance for the Switch Online expansion
behind the paywall.
In the same way that the Nintendo 64 games are behind the additional paywall, which still in the grand scheme of things is not that much money for sort of what you get from the expansion pass at this point, which, you know, also includes like a bunch of first party Nintendo DLC, like the Mario Kart expansions and the Animal Crossing expansions and whatnot. But yes, Golden Sun has been announced that it's coming to Switch Online, which means none of you have a fucking excuse anymore.
I mean, really, none of us had an excuse before anyway, because you could have just emulated the motherfucking thing.
You could have.
Point.
It's a very easy game to emulate. I've streamed it emulated 100 times.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's now you really don't have an excuse. Now you can't be like, oh well, I don't want to download an emulator. I don't believe in piracy. Now it's like, no, just you have the Switch Online expansion pass. Fucking play it. Yeah. So I'm very excited. It's not on there right now. It was announced alongside like Fire Emblem and a couple other
Yeah,
titles as
Metroid
stuff that is
Fusion.
coming. Yes, as stuff that is coming soon. But yes, I will be absolutely playing it again because it's been 8 whole months since I've played Golden Sun, so I'm due. I think it's been longer than that at this point. I don't think I played through either of the Golden Sun games in 2022, but I know that I played through both the first two in 2021. So,
Do you revisit 3 that much?
not as much as the others, simply because it's slightly more of a pain in the ass to
Because it's
revisit
on DS.
because it's
Yeah.
on DS. So I have replayed that game a couple of times. Um, I like Dark Dawn. I'm going to sit here and say that it's objectively not as good as the first two, but I still think it's a fun game. It's a worthwhile experience. The soundtrack is just Motoi Sakuraba at his most unhinged. Just they were. It's like Camelot went just like just do whatever you want, dude. And he was like, you know what? I'm gonna be a fucking prog rock genius, and I'm gonna put the most insane shit to ever come out on this little handheld sound chip out there. Yeah, the Dark Dawn is absolutely worth playing, but it is a game because it's so sort of closely tied to what happens in the first two games. You really should be playing them in order.
Hmm.
But yay, Golden Sun.
It's here
Also,
finally.
similarly, yay, they showed that the Pokemon trading card game for Game Boy Color will also be available on Switch Online on the Game Boy end. And that's another game that I really think people should spend some time with, because it's a really cute, like, it could have just been like a completely menu based card game,
Hmm.
but they turned it into this really cute little RPG, and it's kind of open ended, and it far and away has the best soundtrack on the Game Boy. And I'm not taking any feedback on that. I'm right. The Pokemon trading card game for Game Boy Color is the best Game Boy soundtrack. And if you disagree, you're wrong. Anyway,
That's
we're getting
fair.
Game Boy.
Yeah. Like I said, I feel I really hope that they don't slack in supporting these kind of the same way that they seems to have kind of slacked on in Nintendo 64 and Genesis support.
Yeah.
To say nothing of the other of Super Nintendo and NES as well, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of really good Game Boy Advance games that deserve to see time on this service. That and again, they're starting out of the gate, but like just think of all like Pokemon Emerald and Ruby and Sapphire, and you have like the Castlevania, like when they started putting out the Metroidvania games on DS, and
Yep.
all sorts of good shit that you can go to. I did find it weird that one of the first games that's coming out is Super Mario Brothers Advance 4, which is really just the Super NES remake of Super Mario Brothers 3. Which
It's
I'm just
so
like,
yeah,
okay.
like the Super Mario Brothers games on Game Boy Advance are always like Super Mario Advance 3, Super Mario Brothers 2, and I'm like, why did you not line these numbers up at any point?
Well,
in
so
the thought
I'm trying to
process?
remember what it was now. So Super Mario Advance was Mario 2. Then Mario Advance 2 was Yoshi's Island, which which also was a
Yeah,
little bit
all right.
weird
All right,
in
so
that
Super
regard.
Mario Advance was a port of Super Mario Brothers 2. Super Mario Advance 2 was Super Mario World. Super
Oh,
Mario
okay.
Advance 3 was Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island.
Oh,
Super
okay.
Mario Advance 4 was Super
Was
Mario
Mario
Brothers
3.
3.
Yes. Makes no sense, but you know what?
Stupid.
All four
Stupid.
great games, I owned them all on
Oh, sure.
on
And
the
like the
Game Boy
Game Boy
Advance.
Advance
So,
ports were all just solid across the board. But
yes.
yeah,
So that's
outside
coming.
of outside of the actual Game Boy Advance games, we're finally getting our fucking port or our remake of Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp. That's finally coming out like a
Yeah,
year
and
plus
here's the
later.
thing. It's fucking ready. They could release it now.
I
They're
don't understand why they're waiting until
I figured
April.
out why. I figured out there's two reasons why they did not release it at this presentation. The first reason is because they shadow dropped Metroid Prime and they wanted to make sure Metroid Prime had its time in the spotlight. That's reason number one. Reason number two is they're still trying to sell as many copies as humanly possible as Fire Emblem Engage, and so they don't want another turn-based strategy game to come out and delude the marketplace for that a little bit.
That's probably right.
I thought about this
Yep.
after the fact.
Yep,
So
that's probably correct.
yes.
Yeah, I'm look, I'm stoked we're finally getting it. That Advance Wars has had just a run of really bad release dates. Going back to the fact that the original Advance Wars came out on September 10th, 2001.
How ironic this game about war seems to be bookend, like releasing all around actual wars happening
Yeah,
around the world.
It's unfortunate. But
we got a 10-minute look at Tears of the Kingdom, our most extensive look at Zelda so far, and the game trailer showed us much more than we've ever seen, and yet nothing at all. Nobody has any idea what this game is about. Nobody has any idea what the mechanics of the game look like outside of the normal Zelda mechanics that we would expect to see from Breath of the Wild.
What we did get, however, was one Mr. Matthew Mercer.
Oh, is it confirmed? Is it confirmed that
that's Matt Mercer?
Okay.
That's absolutely Matt Mercer. I remember, like, again, I'm sitting in my fucking car in the Dunkin' Donuts parking lot, and that voice comes on, and I'm like, "Are you fucking serious? Matt Mercer gets the voice Ganondorf?" But good for him, because he's a fucking elder nerd, and this is a guy who very early on in his career was like cosplaying Ganondorf and portraying Ganondorf in a web series called There Will Be Brawl. So, like, good for him to come full circle. Proud of that fucking fucking weeb.
It looks like you can like build stuff in this Zelda now.
Yeah.
Like it looks like you can make like mechanical constructs, which is interesting. So
I saw some people saying this is the Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts of The Legend of Zelda.
And we have a release date now. It's coming out May 12th.
Yes.
Of this year. So just
13th, but it is
a mere 3 months away for Tears of the Kingdom, which has a nice month of lead time before the hell month that is June. That will be beset upon us. So get your Zeldas in now, and then try to figure out how you're going to juggle all the games coming out in June. So
yeah. Honestly, I mean, between Tears of the Kingdom and the Metroid Prime HD remaster being shadow dropped at the end of that, those were probably the two biggest things that happened. But the Direct at large had so much else going on.
It was a solid Direct. You mentioned Metroid Prime that did come out after the Direct ended for $39.99. Reportedly, I haven't played it yet. Reportedly, the remaster is great.
It's got like a fucking 95.
That's insane.
It's one of these things where like it's as perfect as it was when it first came out 20 years ago, which
and
really goes to show how well that game was designed in the first place, that they can basically just up-res the shit out of it, and everyone was just like, yeah, it's just flawless, nailed it the first time. Like,
and you have the option between dual stick control, or you can use the Joy-Cons like you could use the Wii remotes in the remastered version that came out for the Wii many years ago. So that's very neat. I will get to this eventually. I'm not ready to get to it right this second because
confession, I have never played through Metroid Prime.
Nor have I. The only Metroid Prime that I played was 3 because I didn't have a GameCube. So I played Prime 3.
I also didn't have a GameCube, but like I'm not huge into like the side-scrolling Metroid games, and I'm also not huge into first-person shooters. So Metroid Prime has always sort of existed outside of.
It's really not an FPS.
It's not, but it is like.
But it's really not though. Like it does not have any like. It does not feel like an FPS. I'll put it to you that way. Like even though it technically is. It really does not feel like one. Well, in terms of how the game plays out, it really just does feel like a third-person Metroid game, like for all intents and purposes.
First-person Metroid game,
yeah. A lot of RPG stuff in this Direct, which I'm not complaining about.
A lot of RPGs, and surprisingly, none of them are connected to farming.
Well, that was last year. This year is about traditional Japanese turn-based RPGs. Last year was the farming year. Yeah. So the Sea of Stars demo came out on the Switch. That game is also coming out in, I believe, August of this year.
That sounds right.
I played through the demo. It basically does a good job of laying out what that game is. It kind of gives you some insight to the characters, to the world, and you get to mess with the battle system, which is kind of a hybrid between Chrono Trigger and the Mario and Luigi Game Boy Advance RPGs, because it has like a timed button press like mechanic where you can do more damage or negate damage by timing button presses with attacks. I liked it. It does very much feel like these are people that are big fans of Chrono Trigger, and they're just like, we're gonna make a modern take on that, because it literally has like the combo system that Chrono Trigger has, where you can build up a combo meter and then have your characters team up for special attacks. And the attacks are also, a lot of the attacks have area or directional mechanics to them that depend on how the enemies are actually aligned in the world on the battle screen. Okay. So that kind of reminded me of that, and that's pretty cool. The Octopath Traveler 2 prologue dropped. Another game that I started playing. It is just like Octopath Traveler 1.
It's more Octopath.
Yeah.
Look, so Octopath Traveler 2 comes out in 2 weeks on February 24th. 8 new stories. It's fine. I enjoyed the first Octopath Traveler. I never did like the full end game. Like I did the boss rush at the end where you get like the big lore dump, and then like the final boss beat my ass wholesale in like 3 turns, and I was like, I am not grinding this shit out. This is not worth it.
I hope they do a better job in this one of cohesively writing? Tying a narrative together that actually makes sense why the 8 characters would join up with each other.
Yep. That would be nice.
You're not going to get that from the prologue. So the prologue lets you play 3 hours. So I remember when they did the prologue for the first one, you could play the first chapter of 2 of the characters.
That's right.
This
you
one,
Therion or no, yes, you can do Primrose and something else. But yeah. So this you get 3 hours to just
you get 3 hours. You can explore the world to your heart's content. You can play any of the characters that you want to, and your progress will carry over to the main game. If you end up getting that. Again, battle system's the same. I love the battle system in this game. I just hope that the story is enough to keep you engaged.
The music is also fabulous.
Music is also badass.
I love the soundtrack for the first Octopath Traveler. So Octopath Traveler 2 feels like something I will get to eventually, in so much that like I liked the first game. I didn't love the first game, but I liked it enough to play a sequel. But I'm still trying to finish Elden Ring right now, and I've got Persona 3 Portable, and I just like I don't need another hefty JRPG right now.
Here's the problem though, is that I don't think Nintendo's publishing this one. They published the first one.
I think
at least they had a partnership with Square.
Because the first Octopath was
originally a Switch exclusive.
It was originally a Switch exclusive.
Yeah. This is not going to be.
No.
So I'm hoping that this game actually goes on sale sometimes. That would be nice.
That would be great.
I don't know that I want to pay full $60 for it. I got to be honest.
Yeah. It's one of these things where I will almost certainly download the demo and play it on a plane this year.
Right.
I've got a 2.5-hour flight to Minneapolis this year, and that's perfect. I'll play the Octopath Traveler demo at that point in time.
There you go. Perfect. That'll be just enough time for you. They are putting out an Etrian Odyssey collection for $79.99, or you can buy them individually.
Yeah, that feels like a hefty price, but keeping in mind that Etrian Odyssey is one of these interesting little Atlas RPGs. It's more of a dungeon crawler style game than anything else. I played the first one way back when it fucking came out. I mean, that's a long time ago now. But the Etrian Odyssey games, at least like the physical copies of the games, have been so hard to come by, as this game has sort of maintained this cult status over the last 15 years. So I'm glad that they're doing an HD collection, because it means that these games are now more accessible to people who want to play them. There are people who like balked at the $80 price tag for all 3 of them, and I'm just like, 1, that'll probably be on sale at some point because Atlas always discounts their shit. But 2, like, it's still better than trying to find like a actual DS cart for like $150. Like,
yeah. And the games have been because one of the things and I had no fucking idea about this. I learned this in the presentation. One of the things in the Etrian Odyssey games is you actually like draw the maps.
You make your own maps. Yeah.
Right. Which works great on a Nintendo DS. Obviously they had to kind of fit that to work on the Nintendo Switch, which they've done. Now, for those of you like longtime fans that wonder why Carrie sticks so hard to like the hope that there'll be a new Golden Sun, or that we'll see like a Golden Sun remaster or something like that one day. This is why, because if Batten Kaitos can get a remaster, this obscure fucking strategy card game from the GameCube, then literally anything can.
Anything can.
Yeah.
Bats and Kaitos, not just the first Bats and Kaitos, which was the one that was like financially successful to a degree, but they're doing Bats and Kaitos Origins too. So you're getting both Bats and Kaitos games in an HD remaster, and those games are like really, really fun, and they're strange because they have this card-based battle system. I want to say that's another Motoi Sakuraba soundtrack too, but they're fun and they're good and they're weird and they're this like niche little JRPG pair on the GameCube that it feels like me and 3 of my friends care about. So this was not on my bingo card for the year.
I think it was any bingo card for eternity.
Yeah,
like,
dude,
like who was the person that was screaming outside Nintendo like remaster Button Kaitos, you cowards? Like who was that guy? Who was that guy?
I don't know. But they apparently had a slightly louder voice than those of us screaming for
yes.
the Golden Remaster.
And then I skipped over the Deca Police trailer. Like what is that? I didn't even watch it.
Deca Police is the latest game from Level 5.
Okay.
Level 5, which is of course known for Yokai Watch and Dark Cloud and Professor Layton. We are also getting a new Professor Layton game, which is very exciting.
Yes, my wife was very excited.
But yeah, I mean, also like Ni no Kuni. So yeah, a new Level 5 RPG, new IP, Deca Police, something about cops. I don't know. The pig RPG looks good because it's Level 5. I'm curious about it. Anytime Level 5 comes out with a new IP, I'm going to be innately curious because their history with RPGs is generally really good. So deductive reasoning, you're a cop or a detective or some shit, and it's got JRPG elements.
Yep.
Cool.
And then rounding it out is a bunch of DLC shit. They showed off the first new original course that's coming to the Mario Kart 8 DLC, which is Yoshi's Island, which looking to see more there. And also Birdo finally coming to the game because apparently 49 characters was not enough. So we needed to add Birdo to the mix. They showed off the new Splatoon 3 DLC, which is coming out, which takes you back to the hub world from the first Splatoon game.
Yeah, so there's Inkopolis, and then there's Side Order, which is like the big story DLC.
Well, that's coming later. So they tease that. Later. Yeah, and then the other ones. Now they also showed off DLC for Fire Emblem Engage, and I was shocked when I was watching this presentation, and they're like, "We're getting ready to release Fire Emblem Engage DLC pack number 3, and DLC pack number 4 is coming very soon." And I'm just like, didn't this game come out like fucking 3 weeks ago? Like, how the fuck are we on DLC pack number 3 at this point?
So I think wave number 1 was like a day 1 DLC, and then wave 2 dropped like as soon as the direct was over, and then they announced wave 3 and 4. But it's basically just like extra characters. I don't know. Again, I used to be a huge fan of Fire Emblem, and ever since they went with like the weeaboo dating sim bullshit, which, side note, I like a weeaboo dating sim. All right, like I have played many
just not in your
sims.
turn-based strategy game.
I don't want that shit in my turn-based strategy game. So they're adding Crom and Robin and Veronica and Hector and Camilla. So basically like a bunch of other characters from past games that you can pair up with the new characters in Engage. Again, I haven't played any of Engage. I don't know how any of that shit works.
Do you have to pay for this?
The only character... Huh?
Do you have to pay for this?
Yeah. It's an expansion.
Yeah.
Expansion pass. So.
Okay.
Yorp. Outside of that, a few other... outside of that, the DLC... a few other things I forgot to mention. A bunch of other big time remakes and ports that I'm super excited about, namely We Love Katamari Reroll with plus Royal Reverie, which comes out in June. We Love Katamari is a fantastic game. After they did the original Katamari Damacy Reroll a few years ago, I was like, all right, so like We Love Katamari's next, right? And it took them a few years, but they're finally doing it. That's going to have a free game trial for Nintendo Switch Online members starting next week on February 20th. And again, not on my bingo card, but super, super stoked on. Fucking Ghost Trick is getting an HD remaster.
Yep.
Ghost Trick is such a good game, one of my all-time favorites from the DS. Yeah, please play Ghost Trick. It's really, really, really fun. If you're a fan of stuff like the Ace Attorney games or anything like that, it's a murder mystery game. You're a ghost. It's a really, really fun time. So I'm stoked that Ghost Trick is coming back and will be available to a new audience. But overall, really good Nintendo Direct. Like there wasn't anything in there where I was just like, that sucks. Like there was something basically for everyone here.
And it always helps when, so like one of the big focus of this Direct was the stuff, here's stuff that's coming out in the first half of 2023. Yeah. And I think that's helpful because I think where they get into trouble sometimes is when they have a light release schedule and they are only trying to talk about stuff that's on their corner, then it seems kind of weak. Like, there's a lot of shit coming out on the Switch in the first half of 2023, which is good. Like, they need people to keep talking about the Switch because the groundswell keeps talking about a successor at some point, and I know that Nintendo is definitely not ready to have that conversation yet. So the more that they can do to keep the Switch as a good value prop.
I am probably I feel like I'm on the verge of getting an OLED at this point, and that's simply because I am still playing with a day one Switch from 2017.
Look, I gotta tell you, if you play
like a jet engine, when I play in handheld mode,
if you play in handheld mode a lot, it's kind of worth it. You know what I mean? Like if you play docked most of the time, I wouldn't say you need to worry about it, but
yeah. I would say I play docked most of the time, but again, I'm doing a decent amount of traveling this year between work and playing at conventions. So I feel like it wouldn't be so bad to go ahead and do that. But yeah.
Very cool. So that was the Direct.
That was the Direct.
But don't fret, dear listener. More Nintendo news after we talk about the fact that you can join our Discord if you have not done it yet, and you should. You can go to densepixels.com/fans and find all the conversation between all of our listeners going on in there. We have tons of channels. Do you think we just talk about video games on this show? Absolutely not. We have channels for wrestling. We have channels for soccer. We have channels for Formula One racing and other racing series. Want to try to find a fellow listener to play a game with online? Use our LFG channel. We got it in there for you. At some point, I'm going to remember to add a channel where people can drop their usernames just like we had on Facebook a long time ago. Ooh. Why we didn't do that up front, I've got no fucking idea.
Because we're fucking dumb. We've had this Discord for 3 years now.
And we just forgot about it. But
just haven't, not once.
Yeah, don't forget to go to densepixels.com/fans. If you're on YouTube, if you're listening to this podcast, you might not realize we release it in video form every single week. And you can check it out on YouTube by going to youtube.com/densepixels. Click that subscribe button while you're there. Ring the bell icon. You'll be notified whenever we post a new episode. We post it just in time for your commute to work, by the way, or when you first get to work, so you can listen to it when you get there.
Exactly.
It's pretty fucking great because we care about you like that. We love you.
We do.
Now, if you're listening on podcasts feed of some kind, make sure that you don't just subscribe to Dense Pixels. Oh, no. You want to subscribe to all of the other TNP Studio shows as well, including the Nerdpocalypse, Black on Black Cinema, Coming Distractions, and the weekly preview episode, the free episode of the Look Forward Political Podcast. If you listen to all that stuff, that's a lot of content that you get every single week for TNP Studios. And you're like, that is a lot of content. But I'll tell you something. I need more content. I need more TNP Studios. Well, we have got you covered with our premium subscription that you can get by going to densepixels.com/premium. It only costs $5 a month or $50 if you sign up for an entire year. And that gets you the premium shows, which is the Airing of Grievances, our Seinfeld podcast, No Time to Bleed, our James Bond/spy movie podcast. That's our action movie podcast. No, the Men with Golden Tongues is the James Bond spy movie podcast. I don't normally do this ad read. This is Micah's job. Upstage Conversation, which is our musical movie podcast. And you get the full batshit crazy 90 minutes, 2 hours sometimes episode of the Look Forward Political Podcast. Look, we save the really good stuff for behind the paywall with Look Forward.
Of course.
If you've not sometimes we release a free premium episode of Look Forward out into the wild to give you a taste, to see what it's like behind the curtain when me and Jay are a couple drinks in, and we're feeling a little loosey goosey. We're feeling a little loose. Jay's drinking his wine. I've got a whiskey. We're talking politics. It gets a little crazy. You can sign up for that by going to netflix.com/premium. we've been talking a lot about game companies and how generally they suck ass.
Yes.
Because they're out here, they're not even losing money. They're just making not as much money.
They're laying people off. They're
Yeah.
busting unions. They're being terrible to their employees. Not Nintendo.
Not Nintendo. So Nintendo announced in their latest financial report that Switch sales, try saying that 5 times fast, dropped 20% year over year in their last financial earnings statement. However, despite that, they are going to be raising developer pay 10% across the board, which is pretty fucking cool in the wake of all these other companies that are doing layoffs. Nintendo president Shuntaro Furukawa said, quote, "It's important for our long-term growth to secure our workforce." That is the right attitude to have.
That is correct. I feel like this is something that Nintendo has historically been pretty good at as far as like maintaining strong raises for their employees. Obviously, we are dealing with wicked global inflation right now and a whole lot of other bullshit in the economy at large. But it is nice to see a company as large as Nintendo continue to treat its employees in such a way that ensures that the people responsible for making presumably very good games such as Metroid and Tears of the Kingdom, etc., want to continue to work for the company to make those games in the future. So there are some American companies that could probably learn a thing or two from how Nintendo runs things over in Japan. So
yeah, who'd have thought that weathering a temporary storm, could make you a nicer place to work? And again, that's not to say that Nintendo is immune from some troubles. Like we've heard some issues that they've had with contractors in the past. Of course, the fucking Saudi Arabian government investment fund has bought a sizable stake in Nintendo. These are all things that we can talk about and acknowledge, but at the same time, we should acknowledge when they're doing good things out there, like taking care of their workers. The Mario movie's coming out in a couple months, and I wasn't particularly excited for it. Like, I'm going to watch it. I'm probably going to see if you and I can get the review, because that would just make the most sense, I feel like, for this network.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm not like salivating for it. That is.
No, I mean, I have a fucking Princess Daisy tattoo, and I wasn't like salivating for this movie. But also, I haven't seen any of Daisy yet, which is my one gripe about this movie. But
however, they are
taking it old school.
Yeah, we found out that they are leaning into a lot of the nostalgic Mario in-jokes, including the Mario rap from the Super Mario Brothers Super Show. So again, they are hoping that we are all going to go to the theater and be hooked on the brothers to be coming and watching that. That's pretty fucking cool. Apparently, they do the rap in like a Super Mario Brothers plumbing company commercial that's in the movie, which is like a local TV spot. Also very cool is that the homeowner in the commercial is voiced by the same voice actor who voiced Princess Peach and
Princess Toadstool in the old Super Show. Yeah,
it's just very neat.
The spot does end with a website, smbplumbing.com, which you can visit, and that is also full of Easter eggs and various little hidden things that you can click on. And then there's also a phone number, which is 92955 that will deliver a lengthy listen to Charlie Day as Luigi. So you apparently can also text that number, though I'm not sure what happens when you do that. But look, everything I've been seeing from this movie, like the people who are making this movie clearly have a lot of love, not just for like the games, but for the franchise at large, which is it's really nice to see. I mean, it feels like, again, between the Super Mario Brothers movie and Pokemon Detective Pikachu and the Sonic films after they fixed the way Sonic looked, we
quite a little bit of snowmer there. So
look, Ugly Sonic has its place in the world. It is just not in the actual movies. It's in a different movie. It's in Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. But yeah, look, it feels like, you know, we're in this really lovely little era of animated, or, you know, at least in the Mario Brothers film, fully animated, but in Pikachu and Sonic's case, the hybrid animation live action. These lovely little films that are just like true to the source material and are just like love letters to the franchises. And I'm excited. I'm excited for the Mario Brothers
Like I
movie.
said, it turns out all we really needed to do was get Thomas W.S. Anderson or Paul W.S. Anderson out of directing these fucking movies. And
Look, that being said, I did enjoy the Monster Hunter movie.
didn't it take place in like a modern, doesn't it take place in like a modern day setting or something
it's
like
a
that?
fucking isekai. Like a fucking military bus gets warped into the Monster Hunter universe, and then Mila Jovovich has to fight a Diablos. Like, it's really stupid, and I enjoyed it a lot.
I mean, again, that be like also everyone enjoys the first Mortal Kombat film, even though it's awful.
Yeah.
So
obviously,
and then he only had one place to go from there. Carrie, why don't you tell people where they should be purchasing their wares?
They can purchase all of their fine Mario Brothers merchandise. Well, you can go ahead and you can sell your soul to Jeff Bezos by going to densepixels.com/Amazon. And we know that you shop at Amazon. We all shop at Amazon. No one feels good about shopping at Amazon, but you can feel a little bit better about it if you go to densepixels.com/Amazon, because that means we get a little tiny bit of that kickback. And, they skim off a little bit of the fat for us here at Ye Old Dense Pixels podcast. How many fucking episodes do we have now?
God, we're nearing 460, I want to say.
Yeah. Look, we've been doing this a long time. And this shit costs money. So when you shop at Amazon for all the dumb shit you're going to buy anyway, you can feel a little bit better about shopping at a terrible corporation. densepixels.com/Amazon.
There you go.
Thanks.
If you thought that this was going to be all Nintendo this week, you're wrong. I have a game to talk about. So I talked last week, Steam Next Fest, I think just ended today, if I'm not mistaken. And here's why I love indie games. Okay?
Uh-huh.
Indie games are willing to go out there and do some shit. They're willing to go out there and try some stuff that no one ever does because they don't need to sell 5 million copies of a game for it to be successful. And sometimes a game gets made that reaches directly into my brain and said, what if we could take, what if we could make the Reese's peanut butter cup that you didn't realize you needed, but it's going to be fucking amazing when you bite into it. And I said, well, you could try, but what are you going to do? And they said, what if we take Slay the Spire and mash it up with the NHL 94? And I'm just like, well, obviously this is going to be probably one of my favorite games of all time. And so, indeed, there was a Next Fest demo that I played for a game called Tape to Tape, which is a hockey roguelike game. And let me tell you something, I enjoyed the shit out of it and cannot wait for the game to come out in a couple months. So you're probably thinking to yourself, how the fuck can you make hockey into a roguelike? And here's how. So when you start the game, when you start the campaign, you basically pick a superstar player. Like they give you like, here's 3 different superstars you could choose from. And you play with your team of 5 skaters and a goalie. 2 of your players are going to be superstars, right? And the other players are just kind of like grunts that are kind of plugged in. The thing that makes the superstars what they are is they each have a special skill. Sometimes that skill is they can do like a special like double spinorama move, which is pretty cool, which normal players can't do. One of the other ones is called Tomahawk, and it lets you throw your stick at one of the other players on the ice and knock them out, which is really exciting.
Sure.
And so you have your superstars, and then you go through a Slay the Spire like branching path roguelike thing, and the stops along the way are games that you have to play against opposing teams. Or like training opportunities, basically, as you go through. And like getting those games will unlock new power-ups that you can assign to your players. Some of your like grunt players can evolve into other forms of players. So like you can take your medium-sized grunt player and evolve him to a big player who has high checking but slower speed, or a small player who's very fast but can't throw a hit. And or you can get like what they call artifacts, which are basically like power-ups that give your team like a stat boost in the first period of every game, or lets the referee start throwing body checks on the opposing team when you want them to.
All right.
And the gameplay is very, very reminiscent of NHL 94. It's that very easy to access. Like there's only 3 buttons and your skater pad that you have on the screen, and you can kind of deke just by doing your normal controller moves, and it's really fun to play. When you get to the end of each act, there's a boss team that you have to face off against. In this case, the boss team was a team full of other referees. Where you skate against 5 referees, and it was funny because the first goal that I scored got waved off by the referee because he was just trying to throw the game for his buddies. Essentially, like that's kind of a mechanic that you have. It's really fun. Whenever you beat bosses, you unlock like new power-ups that you can use in future runs. You can also unlock new superstar players and new artifacts. So the game seems very replayable. It's really, really fun. Like I enjoyed it thoroughly. Looking forward. I think the game comes out in April. So that's tape to tape. If you like NHL 94, like the old style NHL games, and are looking for something a little bit different, a little bit off the beaten path, this was really fun. Highly recommend checking it out.
Nice.
Yeah.
We have
a very robust post office this week. So let us dive right in as I find the first message.
I will start. We will go to J-Man, who says, with the Metroid Prime remake finally announced in the latest direct, coming in at $40, what's the most money any of you have spent on a game you've already purchased twice? Asking for a friend. I want to say it was probably $40 because I think I bought Skyrim like 3 or 4 times between Xbox 360, PC, and Switch. And then like I've also bought like I feel like I've bought like 5 or 6 copies of Paradise Killer for people.
Yeah.
But I tend to buy that game when it's down to like $8, and then I just like shove it at my friends until they play it.
So there's a handful of games that I've bought 3 times or more. Slay the Spire was one of those games, but I caught that on Steam on sale, so that wasn't very expensive. Darkest Dungeon I bought 3 times, but again, I waited for it to be on sale when I bought it the 3rd time on Switch.
Yeah.
I guess maybe Hades. Like I spent $20 to buy Hades on Steam, even though I already own it on PlayStation and Switch.
Okay.
As well. Yeah, if I'm buying a game a 3rd time, I'm not spending more than $20. I feel like.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I've probably spent 30.
Now the 2nd time, I'm pretty sure that I've spent full retail on the 2nd copy of a couple.
Yeah, 100%. 100%, dude. Yeah, absolutely.
And not even counting remakes, just I need an extra copy of this game to play on this other platform that I have. Mm-hmm. And I want to spend all this money. Like, it's a good thing that Monster Hunter Rise does not have cross-progression across consoles, because if it did, holy shit, I probably would have bought it on the Switch already at this point.
Yeah. Film Wanderer says, God damn it, Nintendo, I want to Switch really badly, but I have trepidations about it since I don't know when they'll start their creation of a follow-up system. Seeing that they'll release Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games for it is swaying me like Selma Hayek's hips in the latest Magic Mike's Last Dance movie. Yo, Selma Hayek, though. Guess my question is, should I get one despite its age? Up to you, man. I mean, I would not say that the Switch is worth just getting for the sake of the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance stuff, but if there's like a handful of other games that are Switch exclusives that you want to play, then like, yeah, fucking get it. If you haven't played Breath of the Wild yet, what the fuck is wrong with you? Go play Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, there are certainly enough games on the Switch to warrant a purchase of it, even though there has to be a new model coming within the next probably 2 years.
Yeah.
Like a new version. But it depends on how many of these games exist. Like Carrie said, if you're just doing it for the retro stuff, I don't think Nintendo has bought enough goodwill with the release cadence of the games on those systems to warrant doing it just for that. No. But if there's to Carrie's point, if there's other Nintendo exclusives, then yeah, why not?
Johnny Chief says, what's up with people complaining about Zelda being $70 when this was us in 1997? And he posts a Toys R Us ad with Doom 64 listed at $74.99. Gretzky's 3D hockey, it's $74.99. Uh, yeah. Yeah, I've never quite understood the pushback against the games being increased to $70.
I
It's something that should have happened
I
a
think it's
while
just
ago.
because like I think all game companies are going to just eat that when they make that jump, because we had the same issue when we got to the Gen
Hmm.
6 consoles, where we went from 50 to 60 for box
Hmm.
copies of games. I mean, to be frank, like we were lucky that in the late 90s that PlayStation was like, "Oh, we don't have to keep up with pricing for cartridge based games. Like we can charge $40 and $50 for these
Yeah.
CD based games," and that kind of reset the marketplace a little bit. Whereas in today's society, there's no way a corporation would do that. They would look at what Nintendo was charging and they would say, "Well, we can get away with charging it too because our games are better,
Yep.
and we'll just make a shitload of profit." So
Yep. Uh, Johnny also make sure to send a note to Micah saying, Micah can now proudly say on air that the city of Philadelphia has lost 3 major championship games in less than 6 months.
that would be Philadelphia. To be
Philadelphia.
wait, three major. What other major championships did Philly teams lose in the last 6 months? I know the Phillies lost the World Series, obviously.
Okay, so soccer, baseball, and football.
No one's look. I love soccer, and I don't give a shit about MLS. I'm sorry. Like if the Philadelphia Union was in there,
I don't either. Now that being said, one of my old coworkers did post on Facebook that with the and I quote, with my soccer, baseball, and football teams all losing in the championships this year, and my basketball team talented but flawed enough to make but not win the finals, I want to give a shout out to the dog shit Philadelphia Flyers for being bad enough for me to never have to pin any hopes on
they
them.
are so bad right now.
They're
It's
fucking
crazy.
awful.
They are so
They're
well, and it's because so. And excuse Carrie and I for getting off on a hockey tangent on this show,
no,
but
fuck
without
you.
Mikey here
We're
to rein
talking
us in.
hockey, and you can deal
Yeah,
with it.
you're fucked. The fact that the Flyers refuse to do a tear it down to the studs rebuild is the reason why they will always be in this perpetual state of bullshit
Yeah,
until they
yeah.
can can do that essentially. So
It's genuinely hilarious because it's not like they weren't that bad a few years ago, but like yo, they are fucking awful right now.
yeah,
223-10. I guess that's not. I mean, they're seventh in the division. Just a hair ahead of the Columbus Blue
yeah.
Jackets.
Well, but
Uh,
Columbus sucks perpetually as well. So
they do. They
what are you
do.
gonna do?
However, they do have a cannon inside of their stadium, and I think that's neat. Um, that's all I have to say about Columbus. All right, moving on. Cam says, "Will Rihanna be DLC for the next Super Smash Brothers game?"
To which,
Her halftime performance did look like Final Destination.
to which I say, leave Sakurai alone. He's suffered enough for all of us. So
Yeah, honestly. Uh, Anthony asks, any thoughts on the anime convention that bans non-anime cosplay? So this was the first time I heard of this. There's a convention in fucking Idaho called Neo Anime Oasis.
of all places, really,
Yeah,
Idaho.
in Boise, Idaho. Like, if you're listening and you're from Idaho, like, sorry, but like, uh, uh, whatever. So they're doing a hardline policy on cosplays that do not draw from Japanese anime, manga, or Japanese games. They're like, it's not a pop culture event, so we are prohibiting costumes that don't fit the convention's themes, and we're doing this for an intimate experience. And it basically just sounds like a child throwing a fucking tantrum because someone wearing a Deadpool costume showed up to their anime show last year. To which I say, go fuck yourself. Relax. It's not that serious. Y'all are all same fucking nerds wearing the same fucking outfits. The guy dressed as Deadpool probably watches too much Dragon Ball Z, and the guy dressed as Goku probably reads a lot of American comic books. So yeah, I understand that there's this weird pushback in certain parts of the convention community to try and have things like fit really neatly into teeny tiny little boxes. And you can still do that. You can still have like an anime specific show by booking anime specific guests and having anime specific programming and panels and workshops and whatnot. But like, don't fucking police the people who are paying to be there by telling them that they can't wear certain costumes because it doesn't fit the theme. Go fuck yourself. Like, I've been attending conventions since literally 2002, okay? And if I was a young teenager and I like wanted to go to an anime show and I was told, "Oh, you can't wear this or that," I would just not want to go to that show.
Yeah,
So
all you're gonna do
anyway,
is drive people away from your convention. Even people that might not have worn something that you didn't want them to wear might have still just been like, I just don't like the overall tenor of how you're
yeah,
treating folks,
exactly.
and be less inclined to go. Plus, you're in fucking Boise, Idaho. Like, take what you can get. Christ Almighty.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Cam says, here's a question from Xavier Woods Twitter. What console has your favorite overall collection of soundtracks? His answer was Sega Saturn.
Bizarre answer, by the way. Like, I don't feel like the Saturn has enough games to warrant this being the answer.
But here's the thing about the Saturn is like every game on the Saturn had a banger of a soundtrack. So
this
like
is a hard.
Can't be mad at it. It's really hard. I
Yeah.
saw this question come in and I had to really sit and think about it. And I think it's one of those things where I have to separate my favorite from what I think is like the best. Because I think the best collection of soundtracks, bar fucking none, is the Super Nintendo. And it's like, I don't think it's even close between the amount of JRPGs, between like just the breadth of different games and genres and musical stylings of that era. I think bar fucking none, the Super Nintendo has the best collection of soundtracks objectively. That being said, my favorite is the Game Boy Color. So
so for me, and this really is true of all pre disc based consoles that came out. I think it's so impressive what composers did with old school game soundtracks, because again, Super Nintendo soundtracks have some of the very best game soundtracks of all time, and they were all done on an 8-channel fucking sound card.
Yep,
And
they were done on the Nintendo SMP. Yeah,
yeah, and
capacity of 64 kilobytes.
yeah, and so what some composers could pull out of such a technological limitation is to be commended. And really, like if you go back and kind of analyze a lot of the music from that era, like just really like taking musical theory lessons and just being very smart composers and just making them work within the confines that they were presented with. Now, that being said, I think game soundtracks have generally only gotten better, and there's certainly some flatter soundtracks that have fallen flat over the years. But it's kind of hard to like dismiss the PS4 era of soundtracks. And again, like the lines get blurred a little bit because everything's like, most games that come out now are, on both consoles, and there's not like console exclusivity. But I think just that whole previous generation that we got out of have amazing game soundtracks from start to finish, and of very different varieties, whether it's like full orchestral scores to stuff like Persona 5 has, where it's, basically jazz fusion, like intermingled throughout everything. Even though Journey was a PS3 game, like that got a PS4 port, so I'm counting it.
Look, Austin Wintory is a very good composer.
Grammy nominated Austin Wintory.
Look,
so.
I consider myself extraordinarily fortunate to have been able to perform Apotheosis from Journey under the direction of Austin Wintory at MagFest this year.
But even indie games, so like
forget.
Fucking Shovel Knight, Undertale.
Dude, you don't have to tell me about indie games. I literally just did a whole fucking orchestra season focused on indie games. I mean, I'm coming to this question as someone who arranges and covers video game music. It takes up all of my spare time. It's all I think about these days. Is how to take some of this stuff and turn it into something else. I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, to go back to those earlier sound chips, to go back to like the Super Nintendo and the Genesis, which had, you know, 6 to 8 audio tracks that they could be
Mm-hmm.
doing simultaneously, and the kind of crazy stuff that these composers were pulling off. And I don't know, I feel like the era, and like maybe this is just me being a fucking 33-year-old, but I feel like the 90s era of game soundtracks like was memorable because they had to do so much with so little. Whereas I don't know that outside of like occasional big hits
Mm-hmm.
like the Persona 5 soundtrack or Journey, um I don't know that we're getting the same level of memorability in contemporary gaming soundtracks. And again, that, you know, that just might be me being a fucking curmudgeon. I totally accept that. But I gravitate, and you know, if you're friends with me on Facebook or you follow me on Twitter, you probably see me posting a lot about the video game vinyl that I have. And most of the vinyl that I have is stuff that's like Game Boy soundtracks or Genesis soundtracks and stuff like that. I'm not really buying a ton of like contemporary video game soundtracks, just because like it doesn't speak to me in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that's also, it's a matter of taste. Again, to go back to Cam's question, like what's your favorite overall collection of soundtracks? For me, it's the Game Boy Color, because that's, you know, for me that's nostalgic. But there's also so much that was done again in that teeny tiny little sound trip. All those old Pokemon themes, the Legend of Zelda games that were put on that, and then you have other like standout games like X and God, the RoboCop Game Boy game is
Mm-hmm.
just like weirdly really good in terms of the soundtrack. I don't know, Magi Nation, Pokemon trading card game, which I talked about earlier. Again, like I think the Pokemon trading card game soundtrack is perhaps one of the best soundtracks of all time. And I'm ready to throw down about it. But yeah, I don't know. It's just it's so hard to compare what was done 20 years ago to what's being done today,
It's
because
like,
today you can have a full
it's like
130
comparing
person live
it's like comparing
orchestra.
athletes across eras. Like it's like everyone's like oh, like so and so's not better than Babe Ruth. I'm like, yeah, but you know, Babe Ruth wasn't playing the same game that people today are
Right.
playing in many ways. So it's kind of like you almost have to compare people within amongst their contemporaries more so
Yeah.
than against across different eras. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
tough. But yeah, for me, it's the generation that just passed, I would say so far.
Tin Man says, I know we all
This is
have
Amir.
favorite.
So
Amir. All right. Well, whatever. I don't ever remember. Put, if you want me to read your name correctly when I'm reading the post office, change your fucking server name to your actual name. Otherwise, I'm just going to call you your server name. Amir says, I know we all have favorite video game soundtracks and characters, but do you have any favorite quote? I like what is better, to be born good or to overcome your evil nature through great effort, from Skyrim.
I mean, come on, what is a man?
Oh, well, but yeah, of course. I mean, what is a man?
A
Miserable pile of
miserable little
secrets.
pile of secrets. So.
It's interesting. I've been mentally revisiting Pentiment. I haven't replayed the game yet, much as I like really want to. I just like, I'm not in the right headspace for it yet. But I've been listening to the soundtrack a lot, and there's one moment in Pentiment, towards the end of the second act, where Andreas is confronting the memory of his deceased son in the labyrinth of his own mind, and he's thinking of his wife and whatnot, and you know, sort of unable to reconcile these sort of images of his family he has in his mind. And you're given two options as far as how you want to answer, and one of them is, can you ever picture someone clearly if you love them, and the other is, can you ever picture someone clearly if you hate them. And that choice, those two dialogue options, like hit me like a fucking ton of bricks, man. Like it's just like, it's so well done, and in the moment I was just like, ugh. So that's it for me. That's what's immediately.
I'm a basic bitch. Like there's some that ring funny to me. Go Home and Be a Family Man, also a
Oh, of
classic
course. I mean,
from Street Fighter 2. Especially if you know the lore, because Ken is married to Guile's sister, so that is more that's more there. You know, and maybe this is an indictment of me as someone who doesn't pay attention. Maybe it's an indictment of the fact that maybe most games writing isn't that good. But I haven't, like, there's been very few lines from any video game that have kind of stuck in my head as being very distinctive. So,
Johnny, back with another one. Tinfoil hat time. Now that Nintendo Switch Online has Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, how big of a check does Nintendo need to cut to get the mainline Pokemon games on it? Make it compatible with Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2, which are already coming to NSO. Now, that second part, I think, is going to be tough because that's going to require a level of reprogramming that I don't know if they really want to fucking deal with. I don't think they have to cut that much of a check to get the Pokemon games. You know what? You know what really wouldn't surprise me at all? If on Pokemon Day on 2/26, is that what that is this year? So yeah, if on February 26th, which a lot of people are predicting they're going to do a quick like Pokemon Day Direct, where they're probably going to announce the DLC for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and some other shit. If they were like, hey, remember when 2 weeks ago we said that Game Boy and Game Boy Advance were coming to Nintendo Switch Online? Bip bop, here's Pokemon Red, Blue, Yellow today. Pokemon Gold, Silver, Crystal are coming in another few weeks, and then so on and so forth into the Game Boy Advance line later on. So that's what I expect.
The only reason they wouldn't is if they wanted to try to repackage those games, like to make if they made another like Let's Go series for
but like even still, like the Let's Go games were so different. Like they're games that are in Kanto, but they're not really Red and Blue. So yeah. Trey asks, is stealth dropping a game a good thing for said stealth drop game? Is Hi-Fi Rush an exception more than Metroid Prime Remaster is? Yeah, it's different because those games are two very, very different situations where Hi-Fi Rush was like, here's a brand new IP and it's available right now today. Whereas Metroid Prime Remaster is, here's a series that's been around forever and ever and ever, and here's the remaster you fucking dorks have been asking for the last 10 years.
I really, and we talked, I think Mike and I talked about this a little bit last week. It really does depend on the game itself. Because there are some games that just do not have a year, 18 months worth of hype to tease out. They just don't. So like if you announce if you announce Hi-Fi Rush a year ago and you have to tease it out over the course of a year, there just ain't enough there. And the game can be met as a disappointment in that case. I think the other factor that makes Hi-Fi Rush a bit of an exception is Game Pass is a thing. Yep. There are thousands of people who tried that game that would never have paid $30 for that game because they had a Game Pass subscription and they could try it with no strings attached. And because the game is good, it got positive word of mouth, and that positive word of mouth spread to that people on like Steam and things like that were then buying the game for $30 because people were telling us how fucking amazing this stealth drop game was. Certainly doesn't work for every game. I think the right games in certain scenarios, that's a great way to do it because you build immediate hype around it. You get word of mouth going. People want to check out this new thing. Now, if the game blows, then then you're kind of screwed.
I mean, that's it. I mean, like Hi-Fi Rush also benefits from the part where like it's developed by Tango and like has some degree of notoriety behind it, where they were just like, hey, we just made this fun little thing, and it's totally different from everything we've ever done at Tango. So here it is. Here you go. I don't know, like. Again, there's really like very specific situations where stealth dropping a game like that can work, and I think both of these situations worked really well. It's interesting to see this both Hi-Fi Rush and Metroid Remastered hit within weeks of each other and both be so successful.
Yeah. But also, you mentioned earlier, Metroid Prime Remaster is something we fucking knew was coming. We just didn't know when it was coming. So I think people had kind of already baked in the anticipation for that game. So even though it was a stealth drop, in many ways, it wasn't because people kind of knew it was coming and
there was that sort of like already like braced for impact sort of deal.
Right.
Hi-Fi Rush was certainly like completely
out of nowhere.
T-Wash asks, what betrayal in any media rocked your world, minus when Evolution betrayed Randy Orton after he retained the heavyweight belt? I don't know what that means.
So mine is also Evolution related, hilariously enough.
Okay.
So back in 2004, Triple H, Randy Orton, Batista, and Ric Flair were in a stable called Evolution. which is basically kind of like a modern day Four Horsemen in some ways. And Randy Orton won the world title from Chris Benoit at SummerSlam, and then beat him the next night at Raw. And they had a big celebration with him in the middle of the ring, and like Batista like picked up Randy Orton on his shoulders, and they were all celebrating. And Triple H, you see him, he's giving the thumbs up to Randy Orton, then all of a sudden he stops, and the scowl on his face happens, and he goes thumbs down, and he tells Batista drop him, and Batista falls backwards, and they beat the shit out of him because he was jealous that Randy Orton was the world champion. Mine was when Seth Rollins broke up the Shield. That because it was completely unexpected. It was just after a feud with Evolution, and the way they did it was great because the Shield had beat the shit out of Evolution for a couple pay-per-views in a row. Evolution looked like they were weak. Batista fucking said deuces and left WWE again for after he was back for his cameo for a couple months, and Triple H is like. He's like, oh, we're going to get you guys. And Shield's like, we've been kicking your ass. And Triple H is like, there's always a plan B. And then in the middle of the ring, here's Seth Rollins behind Roman Reigns. Dean Ambrose has a chair in hand, cocks the chair back. The best part about this, and people forget it, is when Seth Rollins hauls the chair back, you hear some dude in the crowd screaming, before he nails Roman Reigns in the back.
Oh.
Fucking fantastic. And caught everybody by surprise. Like, nobody saw that coming at all, and it was fucking devastating. I can't think of another media betrayal outside of wrestling that affected me so much.
Oh,
wait, that's a lie. I'm sorry. And I fucking can't remember the dude's name now. All I remember is he looked like Jey Uso. Oh, Ryuza, that's what it was. When Ryuza fucking turned his back on you in Ghost of Tsushima.
Oh, okay.
Early on in the game and sided with the Mongols, like that hurt you right here. Cut you deep.
I'm trying to think of like stuff in video games that,
or for you, I would think anime would probably be where you'll find the greatest.
I'm gonna be real. I have not watched a ton of anime recently. Like, there's no like big betrayals in JoJo that you don't see coming from 100 miles away. Everything's pretty telegraphed. Yeah, I don't know. Like, there's a big one in Persona 3 that I'm not going to spoil because there's a lot of people playing that for the first time. I'm just saying that there's a big one in 3. Probably like it's like the Thieves Guild's quest line from Skyrim where Mercer Frey, like, it's like, yeah, go fuck yourself. I'm taking this for myself. I was like, how could you? So that's about it, though.
Yeah, because the one in Persona 5 didn't surprise me at all. Like I saw that coming from a million miles away. Frankly, I was shocked when I was like, "Hey," he's like, "I'm your buddy." I'm like, "Are you?" Like, you seem like kind of a douchebag, and I'm like, "Oh, yeah. You are good, fantastic."
Turns out.
So, yeah, I can't. Like really, it's mine are all wrestling related. So
that's funny. Our last question of the week is from Casa, who says, I started Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth. Great game. Good choice. Have fun with it. Also, make sure you play Hacker's Memory, which is also really fun. Devastated when my favorite Digimon didn't make the cut, with a poster of Pukamon. Carrie, what are some of your favorite Digimon? I'm so glad you asked. No one ever asked me about Digimon. I love Digimon. My all-time favorite, my top-tier favorite Digimon is Devimon. And then after that, I really like the Agumon line, just sort of in general. I like the split lines. I like the Savers end of the Agumon line, which has like Rise Greymon and Shine Greymon. I think Rise Greymon looks cool as shit. Yeah, I'm a big fan of like all the Greymons. War Greymon, Rise Greymon, Shine Greymon, Black War Greymon, Skull Greymon. Give me all them Greymons. Huge fan of the Greymons. Yeah, I like the Devimons too. Myotismon is super fucking all-time cool. I mean, I grew up watching the anime, so like I always thought Myotismon was just like the coolest fucking bad guy because he's just like she's a shitty vampire. So yeah, look. anytime anybody wants to talk to me about Digimon, I am here for you, and I'm here to tell you that Digimon Savers is actually the best season of the anime, and I will go into excruciating detail as to why that is. But yeah, I mean, Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth, definitely a really fun little JRPG. Also, Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth Hacker's Memory, there's a title of a game for you, uh, has my favorite use of O Fortuna I have ever experienced in my entire life. The final boss theme opens with O Fortuna, and it is so over the top dramatic. I laughed so hard. It's like it's meant to be such a serious moment, but they like overplayed their hand and it becomes funny because of the music choice. Perfect, flawless, would not change a thing.
How are you a JRPG and you're just going to be like, rather than think of our own thing, we're just going to think of the most overused, like, dramatic
so like it opens with O
time.
Fortuna and then it goes into like a fucking like battle theme like original from there,
Okay.
but they sample like the chorus of O Fortuna and I'm just like, beautiful, perfect, so over dramatic, so unnecessary. 10 out of 10 would not change a thing. Thank you, Hacker's Memory.
Very cool. Well, that concludes the post office, which, again, you can submit your questions to us by going to densepixels.com/fans, which means that is a wrap on this week's show. Again, don't forget to subscribe to this show as well as all the other TNP Studio shows wherever you download fine podcasts. You can subscribe on YouTube by going to youtube.com/10pixels. You can go to twitch.tv/10pixels. You can also check out our individual channels. Carrie is Tuppets Carrie. She streams the most. I'm
Which is
Pixels
not
Brad.
Often.
I stream even less.
What you should do?
410.
What you should do is follow my band on YouTube at QuickSafe Band on YouTube. That's what I should be plugging, because that's where all my creative energy goes into these days. And since I'm talking about it, and since I'm going to be fucking busy, and I don't know how many podcast episodes I'm going to have time for in the next few weeks, I'm just going to go ahead and plug all my upcoming shows now. I'm doing 3 shows over the course of about 10 days next month. I'm going to go to Disney with my in-laws, and then I'm going to come back and do a bunch of shows. So I hope no one needs anything from me next month, because I'm not going to be able to do it. On March 11th, I will be, and by I mean QuickSave. QuickSave will be part of Bonus Stage. It's music online. It's free. We will be playing at twitch.tv/bonus stage van. That's van short for Vancouver, not the van down by the river that your nasty uncle lives in. We'll be on there at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, and a few of our local buddies will also be on that show. And then the week after that, March 18th, if you live in Delaware, you can come see us play at International Groove Records in Newark, Delaware, with our buddy Mon. So that is video game night at International Groove Records. We're just going to be hanging out. It's $5 at the door. Come hang out. Come see us. We got a lot of great tunes planned. And then if you're here in Baltimore, you can come see us on March 22nd down at the Auto Bar with our friends in Thrill Killer, as well as Button Masher, Grammy winner, by the way, and Crunkwitch. So definitely come hang out if you are interested in video game music, and you want to just fucking come out, wag your finger on a Wednesday down in Baltimore.
Delightful.
It is. I'm going to be so burnt out. Can't wait.
Well, that's it for us this week. Thank you guys very much for watching and listening, and we'll see you all the next time.
See ya.
You're watching the Dense Pixels YouTube channel. Click the subscribe button while you're here, and make sure you check out our weekly podcast where we discuss the latest gaming news and our impressions on what games we've been playing.